term for, I don't know, since the 90s. Right now, there's so much noise about cryptoanarchy that I'm wondering if we're actually using it as a brand or a label, something that we're saying, hey, we're cool, or do we actually know what cryptoanarchy is? And I'm actually talking about cryptoanarchy as a philosophical system, as a system for socio-political change, and not as a label. And because I had to relearn that myself, to relearn what the core roots of cryptoanarchy are, I went back to the classical definition. Cryptoanarchy is the realization of anarchy through cryptography. Anybody here agree? Okay, we're at about 10%. Okay, thank you. So you'll be the 10% that may not be my friends anymore afterwards. And the other ones, you're probably wise. So let's get started with analyzing the whole thing. One of my backgrounds is actually in philosophy. So I go to words and terms and I take them apart. And I try to understand what their correct content is. Because when we talk to each other, we use words to transmit ideas from one mind to the other. And that usually only works when we have ideas and we know what it refers to. So analytically, we start with anarchy. Who wants anarchy here? That's kind of almost the same people. That's disturbing. So what is anarchy? Anarchy is a negation of archy, and archy is the word that the Greeks used for meaning rulership or systems of rulership, actually. The Merriam-Webster does things like translation to dominion as well. And I have something in air quotes there, coercion. It's a word everybody uses, nobody understands. It actually means implementing norms by violence. That is coercion. So anarchy is not rulership, not dominion, not coercion. Now, what is rulership? Another complicated term that we use all the time. We're talking about governments, and we're talking about laws and all these things. But what is it actually? And there's a second thing to me, so I'm not just from a philosophical standpoint. No, I also do system analysis because I'm a computer person. So I took rulership apart and was looking at, okay, what is it actually that rulership is? And it's a process. So what we're seeing there is the trivial process of rulership. Very easy. Everybody in the political sciences can learn that within maximum 1 hour. All of you will have understood it afterwards, I hope, which should qualify you to become a politician. So what is happening here? So we, the subjects, somebody, is doing something. We do that all the time. It's called acting. If you're not acting anymore, you're either extremely boring or dead. And whatever we do is potentially observed directly or indirectly by other people. And those other people can then attribute the act to us. They can say, okay, Smuggler did give a talk. That's the attribution. Now, there's the possibility that what I'm doing here is illegal or breaking with the norms. I'm hoping I'm not going too far today. What happens is that people, other people, judge our actions. They say, okay, this action is okay or it's not okay. Now, how do we do judgments? Judgments are applications of general norms to concrete action. So I have a general norm like don't bash the government as a potential norm. Don't bash the government. And now I'm here and saying, I think that most governments on the planet, because they're coercive systems, are shit. So I would break this norm of not bashing the government. So we have norms that inform our judgments, and based on that application of norm through judgment to the action, we decide if I should be punished. You know, I broke a norm, and I have to be brought back into normative behavior. So we have punishment. Now, the purpose of punishment is not just to get back at me, but it's also to demonstrate to everybody that the norms are actually in place. Because what differentiates a norm from something else that somebody says is that a norm is enforced and something else isn't. So what we have here is at least two entities, like the subject and the other, and we have some abstract rules, norms, and they're brought together, and in the end of it, the others are happy because the norms that they believe in are enforced, and I'm not so happy because I'm punished for bashing the government or whatever I did. So there's another thing to my life, and that is military. So I've been at the military, and I've done military tactics and strategy, and one of the things we have in the military is called the OODA loop. It's the way on how we interact with somebody else in a fighting situation, or in any situation of conflict, actually. And in a way, it's actually how we operate in a dynamic world, all of us. So what we do is we observe what is going on. We orient, which is we put things into perspective. Then we decide what to do next. And lastly, we execute our decision. If you're semi-mentally healthy, that is how you work, more or less. Now, the interesting thing is that rulership works the same way. You know, rulership, there's an act, you know, it's observed. Then we attribute it to the person so we know what norms to apply. Then we take the norms and judge, that is our decision. And then we punish or reward, that is our action. And that is what the government or any other system of rulership does all the time. And it does it all the time, that's why we call it a loop. Because when you're done with that loop, you continue again. You look for the next criminal or the next behavior or whatever, and continue. And in a way, you could think about rulership systems as these loops feeding back on its own all the time. And when you do that, you kind of have rulership already. Which means that there are actually a lot of others that are possible. These others that observe and attribute and judge and maybe even define norms, there's an interesting thing, and that is that we ourselves as individuals are one of those controllers as well. If you're semi-healthy mentally, as we already established, we all are, we follow that OODA loop as well. We have certain values that we apply to our choices, to our actions, whatever. So we feel bad if we break our values. That is basically the judgment part or the punishment part of our OODA loop in action. Now there are 5 classical controllers that they're called, the people that make the norms and enforce them. It's not from me, I stole that from the internet. It's called the LXM5 controllers. And we have governments, organizations, societies, contract, and self. And I've skipped platforms here because only those 5 minus platforms are the classical controllers when you follow LXM. And they have certain characteristics. So the government we kind of all agree on is the organization that is actually defined by violence. When we get it means that at some point you say yes or no. Though the no is actually in brackets, because it actually only means that you give consent in the form of yes. So there's the moment where you step into an agreement or step into an organization. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can step out again as well, just for your information. So you might be locked in. Then voluntary means you can actually step out. That means you can step in and you can step out of a relationship that is voluntarily. And then the last thing, it's not classical, I added that, I'm sorry, Alexon. I think he's dead, doesn't matter. So the last thing basically means, is that a form of rulership? And one thing I would like to point at, and that is the non-classical controller, is the platform. What is a platform? A platform is a socially required but free market or market-oriented service system, etc. You're, on paper, you're joining voluntarily. In practice, if you don't, you're excluded from society. Things like Facebook are moving towards becoming platforms of that kind. They're not run by the government. They're not backed by military so far. I mean, I don't know what Facebook has, but I hope they're not backed by the military. You formally say, yeah, I'm joining, but the choice of joining is really a choice of, do I continue to be part in society or not? So my question, for example, would be, how many here don't have a Facebook account? Shit, that's a wrong crowd to ask. I'm very proud of you. So sooner or later, you might decide differently, because the government will say, or the bank will say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you a loan anymore because you don't have a social media score. So that might happen in the future if we're not lucky. So keep that in mind when we're talking about rulership here. There's this term that I had before, the hierarchical column. And whenever people talk about anarchy, this comes up. What is a hierarchy, actually? So there are anarchists in general saying, we want to abolish all hierarchies. And whenever an anarchist or anybody says that, you may tell him that he's stupid. Because hierarchy is first and foremost an abstract mathematical term. It basically only means that you have a layered graph where you have less nodes in the beginning, on the top, more nodes on the bottom, and the graph is directed and not cyclical. That's all that hierarchy actually means for the computer people here. So you cannot do away with hierarchies. They exist everywhere. They exist in animals, classifications, intelligence, communication, whatever. So hierarchies exist. Let's get over that. What we're really talking about is dominance hierarchies. It's hierarchies in which the ordering of society is unequal when it comes to defining norms and or enforcing norms. That's the only hierarchies we can actually talk about when we come to politics. And so it means definition or enforcement, and the definition part is the normative part, so it's saying, yeah, this is a law, but as many of you might have already realized, it doesn't really matter when somebody says this is the law. That doesn't, I mean, I can say it's the law that we all undress, and nobody's following it. No, it's actually the enforcement that is the factual power. Only when somebody with a gun comes in here and says undress, some people might start to undress. The alternative is enough beer, of course. But it's the enforcement that is the factual power. And so this is a hierarchy. A hierarchy is definition of norms, there's an unequal opportunity to define norms and or unequal opportunity to enforce those norms. So if only one of us has a gun, we have a hierarchy already. So let's go back to anarchism as a term. We have some classical examples of anarchy, and I subscribed to one of them in the past. I don't anymore, which is one of the changes of the talk, I'm sorry. So there are these anarchists we see in media, those people that throw Molotov cocktails at everything. They're actually not anarchists. There's another term for that it's called anomie, not anarchism, and anomie basically means no rules. So if somebody tells you, oh, you want anarchy because you don't want to have any rules, he has a confusion of term there. Just for the next time you have this discussion, I heard from a person lately that the father said, okay, you want anarchy and then we have chaos. No, that is enemy. Next time brag that you're smart by knowing the right term. Next thing, no punishment. You remember the OODA loop? The observe, and then the judgment, and then later the action, the punishment. So you can actually take those 4 parts and apply anarchy to them. And you see, for example, that there are anarchistic thoughts that only apply to the last one, to the punishment part. So for example, diplomatic immunity, that is a thing that actually exists. I've heard there are contracts that define something that's called diplomatic immunity. And that basically means if I fall under that contract, I'm a diplomat in Czech Republic, for example, and I break the law by speeding, I cannot actually be punished by it. I'm standing outside of Czech law, even if I'm in the Czech Republic. That is a form of anarchy, because this loop of rulership doesn't actually apply to me. Then there are these hegemonic states, like the United States of America. They have enough bombs and enough history of showing that they know how to apply them without caring about collateral damage, that they are basically unchallenged. When they do shit, most of the world says, yeah, we don't like what you're doing, but what shall we do? It just happens. So if anybody tells you anarchy is bad and it will never happen, we actually have 2 forms of anarchy that exist right now. At least 2 forms. Then we have the very sympathetic form of recreational nuclear weapons. I'm still working on that. But it basically means that if punishing you is so expensive, like, you're punished, killed, whatever, and then somewhere in, let's say, Washington, D.C., a nuclear device goes through several states of fission, then people might not touch you when they know that. So you have factual anarchy there. And this is, luckily, I think, I hope, it's a fictional idea. You have that in some sci-fi books like Snow Crash, for example. You have guys that have that kind of anarchy. And I have a few friends that really, really want to have a nuclear bomb because of that. Just for anybody of you thinking about that, the maintenance costs of nuclear devices are actually higher than their purchase costs. It's a little bit like owning a yacht. Buying it is easy, maintaining it is shit. Try something else. And then there's an interesting thing, and that is an ideology. It doesn't exist, actually, and that is called Christian anarchism. So there are forms of anarchism that come from a Christian background, and you kind of know this idea, Jesus saying, judge not. And there are people that apply that and say, okay, if shit happens, it's still shit, but we don't have the right to punish anybody. Hence, we don't punish anybody, so we have Christian anarchy. It has never been widely adopted as far as I know. I mean, it would be a change. And then we have what most of us, refer to when we're talking about anarchy, and that are voluntary non-total norms. So that means that the normative part that informs our judgment it's not using the same norms for everybody, plus you are the one that chooses if you want to fall under certain norms. So that is what we mean with anarchy when we're talking about anarcho-capitalism, for example. It is what we're talking about when we're talking about mutualism. I included that here because some people think that private property should be less strict than anarcho-capitalism. So even you semi-proprietarians, you're welcome. And then we have the classical anarcho-syndicalists. Those are the smart, left-leaning anarchists. And then there are the non-smart, left-leaning anarchists. What? It exists. So we have black bloc anarchism. Those are the people that run around and say, whatever, destroy everything, basically. And down with capital, and down with religion, and down with football and all these things. These call themselves anarchists, but they're actually not, because they're a total system. Their idea is actually that it applies to everybody, no matter if you want it or not. That's the reason they throw stuff around and attack you, to convince you. You know, that's an argument in their book. They're not anarchists because they're actually not abolishing hierarchy. What they're doing is they put hierarchy, they put it on the top, turn it around, and say, now the rules of everybody apply to you. There's still a lot of rulership in there. Am I right? Yeah, okay. I convinced one person. Okay. So this is basically what all classical anarchists do. They have this nice OODA loop we had before. Somebody does something, we observe it, it's attributed to the person, norms and judgment, punishment. And classical anarchistic thought attacks those last parts. It either does away with punishment, or it changes the way in which norms are found and applied. So last half of the OODA loop. And that also means that they're inherently revolutionary. They have to change an existing system to implement anarchy. You cannot actually, in this model, have multiple systems standing next to each other and just be fine. No, you're actually competing over the last point in all rulership positions. What you're actually doing is not really getting away with rulership. You're hopefully only splitting it apart in many pieces, and that's it. Why am I talking about that? Because crypto-anarchy, and that is a realization that shocked me a little bit, because I'm classically an anarcho-capitalist. Crypto-anarchy doesn't work that way. Crypto-anarchy is sadly, or luckily, depends, both simpler and more subversive. Because instead of competing over norms and punishment, it's actually disrupting the loop completely. What we're actually doing in crypto-anarchy is attacking the observation and attribution part. If you don't see the act, there's no judgment. If you cannot attribute the act, there's nobody to punish. There are a few applications of that that are complicated, let me say that. But let's go through, how does that actually work? You know, why is that the case? We have, with cryptography, something that allows us to build walled gardens. Little things on the internet or somewhere else where only people can join that have been invited. And everybody else is kept out by math and hopefully well-implemented code. And these places can factually, without competing with anybody else, just define their own norms. And I've been an admin and moderator of several of those places. It can go really wrong, but they can also be the nicest places on the planet. And then attack on attribution. That basically means you're able to act without anybody pointing at you and saying you are the actor. So if you disconnect the physical body from the activity, then you have non-attribution. And we have technologies that do that, or systems that do that. So we have stuff like Tor, anonymous browsing. We have anonymous payments like Zcash or Monero. And I'm doing air quotes not because they're all shit. I'm saying that because we could do better. You know, if you're a developer of any of those systems, when you see this, hello, when you see this, feel challenged to become even better than you are now. You know, not a bashing, support. Activities, that is a great term. You know, we're talking about acts. There's so many more things you can do without attribution than just paying and just talking. So if you take something like communication, you make it non-attributable, and you combine that with Internet of Things, remote control, whatever, you can basically do everything. A drone that flies through the world, directed by a human that you cannot trace, allows you to do everything a drone can do. You have to realize that, because it's one of the applications. One one of the problems that we have with cryptoanarchy, that we could do anything. And how do we do that? There are not that many ways in how we destroy observation and how we destroy attribution. It's very simple. Well, simple. We have encryption, symmetric, asymmetric, whatever, that allows us to conceal data in a way that is confidential against anybody who doesn't have the key, which could be yourself, and often is. Then we have mixes and relays. Those are basically the two fundamental parts of most communication anonymization systems. Relay means I take the identity of somebody else and he forwards the data for me. And mixes means I take many communications, reorder them so that an outside observer cannot, take the former order and apply it to the later order. That's a mix. And mostly everything kind of falls back on those two. Then we have blind signatures. I have discovered recently that even cryptographers that are under 30 years old don't know what a blind signature is. A blind signature allows you to digitally sign data in a way that the signator cannot actually recognize what he signed. But the guy who put in the thing to sign can reveal both the content and the signature to a third party, and there's no way for the signer to link it to a certain signing process. That basically allows you stuff like blindly signing a digital check. You sign the check, you give it away, the check has a valid signature, but you have no idea when you actually signed it, and to whom. And then we have zero knowledge proofs. They have been in a talk, like 2 talks before. ZK-SNARK is an application of zero knowledge proofs. And what all of these have in common is that they're math of hiding, of concealing, of covering up. It is this math, these methods, that allow us to destroy observation and attribution. And that is actually where the name or the term crypto-anarchy comes from. It is taking this crypto to disrupt rulership that leads us to anarchy. There are some crypto things that don't belong there. I mean, cryptography is a wide field, And just as an example, there's the Estonian government who has a chip card that you can use for e-government applications. You can open bank accounts, whatever. And they're using cryptography, rather badly, but they're using cryptography. They're using signatures, non-blind signatures, that allow you to act over the internet. That is not a form of anarchy. That is a form of bringing government and rulership into the 21st century. It has nothing to do with anarchy. It's the first form of cryptography, the confidentiality, hiding, concealing cryptography, that this applies to. It's not from me, it's a great quote, I like it really. I have no idea who that guy is. I think he was on Cypherpunk's mailing list, but cryptography rearranges power, because it actually removes power. This makes it an inherently political tool. If you're a cryptographer and you're working in the fields of blinding, anonymization, confidentiality, you're a politician. There's no such thing as neutral when it comes to that technology. It also means that you can be a cryptographer calling yourself working in crypto-anarchy, and all you do is build systems of tracing that allow us to have better, more efficient governments. And a better, more efficient government is not a great idea. It means that you need less people to rule more people. That's more government, not less government. So that means, and that is probably very dangerous to say, there are a lot of people that call themselves crypto-anarchists that probably don't understand the term or don't understand the philosophy. That doesn't mean they're bad. It doesn't mean that what they're doing is shit. I'm not saying that. It's just using the wrong term and confusing everybody, especially me, which is why I'm going to give this talk, or I'm giving this talk. If you think that flying cars are crypto-anarchy, no, There's no cryptography in them that conceals anything, so they're not crypto-anarchy. They might be techno-anarchy or techno-libertarianism. Great. I want flying cars. I think they're great. They're a great political tool. That wasn't a joke. They're really great political tools, in my opinion. There's a talk on that tomorrow. But they're not crypto-anarchy. If you print 3D guns, print guns with a 3D printer, the way around, that is great. I think that being able to print your own gun is a good idea. I bought myself a 3D printer, among other things, for that. But that's techno-anarchy. It's not crypto-anarchy. There's no math of concealing in there, unless you're using an SSL connection to download it. TLS 1.3, of course. Then there are people that say, okay, one of the main things of crypto-anarchy is decentralization. Decentralization is often a really smart choice when you're building systems, because it kind of means that killing part of the system doesn't matter too much. It also means that controlling part of the system doesn't destroy the whole system. But it's not crypto-anarchy. It's a useful design element. But if we had a trustable computer, if we had something like that, that is just executing what we programmed without anybody being able to change that, and that is one computer and it implements crypto-anarchy, it's still crypto-anarchy. You don't have to decentralize to be crypto-anarchists. And it also means that if you're just decentralizing, that doesn't make you a crypto-anarchist either. It might make you technically smart, but that's about it. Okay, and the last thing, I'm actually glad that either you don't read much or you're not throwing bottles yet. A few years ago, I was standing pretty much here, claiming that Bitcoin is a crypto-anarchistic technology. And I have to say that I was stupid back then. Because, based on our analysis, Bitcoin isn't. It's a smart little thing, and yeah, we can have monetary influence with that, and yeah, we can experiment with doing things ourselves on the internet, but it's not concealing, it's not hiding, it's not crypto-anarchy. It's about as crypto-anarchistic as a car. You know, you can drive a car as a crypto-anarchist, but just because you're driving a car doesn't make you one. And that's the same thing with Bitcoin. And sadly, what we're seeing today, and there are maybe people in this room, if for you Bitcoin is everything that crypto-anarchy is about, then you have not heard the shot yet, because crypto-anarchy is so much more. There are blockchain-based cryptocurrencies that are crypto-anarchistic in my book. I'm just saying that, so every Zcash and Monero and a few other guy, you're very welcome, it is crypto-anarchy. There's an issue with crypto-anarchy. That is the second bad revelation I had. You know, I had several bad revelations while preparing this talk. So one bad revelation was Bitcoin alone isn't enough for me to call myself crypto-anarchist. That was harsh, just saying. The other thing was that anarcho-capitalism is not equal crypto-anarchy. That was very harsh for me as well. And then there's this, and that is what actually happens if you have crypto-anarchy. We're so used that in every social context, we're kind of able to point fingers at people and say, you did wrong, or pay me back my debt. In crypto-anarchy, you cannot do that. You cannot observe, you cannot attribute. And that is a real issue, because how do we actually interact as people, societies, whatever, when we cannot point the finger anymore? I'm very sorry, it's not personal or something, okay? Because all of our concept of justice, of punishment, of regulation, whatever, depend on this pointing fingers. And crypto-anarchy doesn't just take the finger away, it takes the whole arm away, and the eyes, and everything else. The only thing we can really do is to say, okay, if you want to interact with me, you have to already prepay your punishment. That's the only way. We can only apply things to collateral security that has already been put up there. And that is kind of another thing that really freaked me out, because I'm an enemy of smart contracts. But that is actually a useful application of smart contracts, to put up collateral, to put up security. So, yeah, I think that some smart contracts are smart. Mea culpa. The other thing is that stuff like reputation systems cannot actually reach into the future, because you can change your name, whatever. The only thing you're actually losing is past social capital, never future. And we have these things where we think, oh yeah, crypto-anarchy, we kind of, whatever, talk about people and say, oh, he's a bad actor. That's not crypto-anarchistic. I mean, it works because we're not living in crypto-anarchy. But if we had crypto-anarchy, reputation systems can only look in backwards. They can never look forward. The only thing you're giving up is past social capital, never future. And most of our systems, anarcho-capitalism, the normal government, whatever, depends on our punishments reaching into the future, because we don't have enough collateral to put up. So there's no way to say, okay, I'm putting down for 50 million euros, so in case I kill someone, I lose that. Instead, we say, okay, we find the guy and put him into a prison cell for the next 100 years. That is his punishment. That doesn't work in crypto-anarchy. That is a problem. And it's a problem that I have no real answer to. Doesn't mean that I'm not a crypto-anarchist anymore, but it is something we have to think about. How do we actually do justice when we can only reach into the past and never punish in the future? And I happen to work for a company that has the same issue. So I work for a VPN provider that is doing private VPNs, like privacy-enhancing VPNs. And there's this little issue that we don't know who our clients are, what they're doing. You know, that's kind of the point of the whole project, you know? That's what people pay for us being stupid. There's another problem, and that is there are bad actors out there. So because of our clients, I had the police at home, for example, drawn guns, you know, oh, give us your data. We had money taken from us, we had servers taken from us, we have lost data centers, and so on, because there are people that are actually bad people. It doesn't really matter what they're bad at, you know, but they're really bad. And if you're running a service like that, you're actually the one who gets punished for it, the service provider. So we need some way of taking those norms, you know, like don't DDoS every second bank on the planet, and then kind of transmit it through our system back to the client, so the client says, oh yeah, I shouldn't do that. And the way we did that, because we're crypto-anarchists, you know, we're kind of trying to live what we talk, we had to design a system that allows us to say, okay, we have a client that puts up collateral. In this system, it's a token that you get when you start using the service. And then you need that token to authenticate yourself, and then if there's abuse assigned to your session, we destroy the token, and if you lose all your tokens, you lose access to the service. And the interesting thing with those tokens is they're blind. They're untraceable. We issue them, but we cannot follow them. We don't know if A and B are tokens used by the same person or different persons. We don't know. This is still experimental. We have no real experience yet if that works. I mean, technically it works. We have no clue if it works socially. Maybe next year I come here and say, I'm really sorry, I can only talk for 5 minutes because I'm going back to jail. Or it could be, yeah, we managed it, we only have nice users now. It's probably somewhere in between. How does a world of crypto-anarchy actually look like? So the one thing we already have is digital darknets. Digital darknets mean that you're anonymous, both as a provider and as a user of communication services. Tor is an example. You have hidden services. I2P is another example. And all kinds of things can happen there, like Silk Road, evolution, and other things. Untraceable digital cache is something, I'm an old guy, so when I use that word, it's heavy on my heart because we already had that once. It's not there anymore. What we have now is something that is hoping to get to the same level of privacy someday. But untraceable digital cache actually means that you can prove over a large anonymity set that there's no distinguisher between payment users. We don't have that yet. Physical darknets. The left side is the stuff that looks science fiction but isn't. Because we already have networks of dead drops. It's used in the drug trade on the darknet, for example, because using postal services has a high occurrence of loss, including loss of freedom. So what is happening now is that people have networks of dead drops and you're only trading the location where your goods that you bought are hidden. We also have drone networks. People flying drones over borders to smuggle goods. And sooner or later, Amazon will do that as well. You know, you order on the wrong Amazon website and give it an address in a different country, you might have a drone crossing borders, maybe. Then, the future. I wish that sooner or later we'll have a world in which we will have black box spaces. Spaces that are unobservable from the outside, where the government cannot look in, where other organizations I don't like cannot look in, and where you can be active. So one of these examples are the temporary autonomous zones. If you know me a little bit longer, you know that I use that term at least 10 times a day. But it actually means that we create spaces in which we can experiment with what does it actually mean if you cannot attribute anymore. Masks are another example. It's like one of these hiding technologies that have been around longer than the computer. There's like a huge cultural historical body on the use of masks for all kinds of purposes. I use it because I have an ugly face, but in general it's used for privacy. Then we have this issue that you might want to connect multiple black spaces with each other. Autonomous cars come into my thought there, into my mind, because autonomous car means that you don't need a license because the car is driving on its own. So why should you have a license in the first place? There's nothing in my mind that really prevents you to anonymously rent, car share, an autonomous car and say, bring me from A to B without driving, without ever using private data in that transaction. Or if you're a little bit richer, you might have a driver that drives you around and looks scary enough that he's not stopped. Also known as diplomatic pouches, they're already in existence. I want them as well. I want to send something from Czech Republic to Russia and knowing that nobody is going to open it. Actually, I want it the other way around when I'm thinking about it. And this whole thing, there's another issue there, and that is that my hope that crypto-anarchism can be a system that is established widely, I think that hope is unrealistic. I think we have this issue that most people actually want attribution. Not of themselves, of others, of course, right? I mean, they want to be hidden and blind and whatever, but others shall be controlled, which means that a crypto-anarchistic world will likely only function when it's embedded into a system that is tolerant against it, that says, okay, you can have your black spaces, but just make sure that the fences are high enough so your crypto-anarchist people don't spill into the real world. So, and that is actually a place where I think that anarcho-capitalism is actually a good contender. You know, there might be an option to make a deal with an anarcho-capitalist society that allows us to have temporary autonomous zones. And then there's this last thing. If you're running around with your legal name, you're also not a crypto-anarchist. I'm Smuggler, by the way. So it's not my real name. A surprise. Okay, a lot of theory, a lot of dreaming. If you think that undermining coercive rulership is a good idea, and you're of the same opinion as me, and that is that cryptographic technology could actually allow us to undermine rulership, then we might want to get involved. So one of the easiest things is make sure that your cryptocurrency payments are actually completely end-to-end untraceable. And I say that in every talk, it doesn't really matter what the subject is, you know, do cryptocurrency over-the-counter transactions. You know, don't give your name, don't sign up with Bitcoin DE or whatever. Sorry for all the exchange operators here, I still like you, but okay. All or nothing escrows. That's a game theoretic concept that allows you to exchange goods in a way that either both parties win or both parties are beginning to cry because they lost everything. You can tune those escrows in several different ways. It's actually a field of research. So if you are smart or think you are, and you don't know what to do, and you have some experience with game theory, all or nothing escrows is a great subject to study. And if you know how it works, please talk with me. Then we have this issue that because we don't have attribution anymore, the only way to actually initiate punishment in a physical environment is direct apprehension. So when we're here and say this guy who's standing up has taken a wallet, sorry to bother you, has taken a wallet, then in a crypto-anarchistic, yeah, exactly, that's what you do. In a crypto-anarchistic world, you have to stop him right now. Because the moment he's there, too late. No attribution anymore, we have no idea how the guy looked. So we have to find out how to build systems, groups, codes, norms, whatever, that allow us to do direct attribution, direct apprehension. So we are able to get the wallet back, because that's the only thing we have. And we don't really know how to do that. Historically, there are places like that where direct apprehension was a part. So medieval marketplaces are a good example of that. So somebody would shout thief, and everybody else would stand still, not move anymore. And the only guy moving would be the thief. And then everybody, you know, takes him. So we need something like that. And I should have thought about that when you went. Anyways, then going back to the autonomous car. We have the sharing economy that is kind of developing, and it's a data nightmare. And it's also a nightmare when it comes to observability and attribution. Every single car-sharing provider knows where you went, how fast you went, where you picked up the car, probably even if you smoked in it or picked your nose. I don't know what they have in those cars. It would be really nice to find out if there's a good way to share resources, rent them out, and build that in a way where nobody is really at risk of losing too much if they cannot find somebody who's abusing the service. I have no idea how to do that, but that's why I'm presenting it here. So next year, somebody of you have an idea, please, and give a talk. Thank you. And the last thing is purely egoistic, and that is I need more clothing, better clothing. That protects my privacy. So if you're an artist, a fashion designer, supermodel, talk to me after the talk. And lastly, there are 3 people that suffered with me. Well, no, they suffered about me while preparing the talk. Tatjana, Frank, and Paul, thank you. And these are my contact details. And thank you all for listening.
So thank you very much for inspirational talk. Now we have some time for questions.
Thank you, Smuggler, for the great talk. And Yeah, I heard that you changed your philosophical views
Yeah.
during the last years. I feel the same, and I'm also a very faulty human, making many mistakes. And you said that the only way to make amends would be direct apprehension, like directly after something happened.
Yeah, and yeah.
Because that's the only way where you can attribute something.
Yes.
But how can I take responsibility if if I realize maybe 1 year later, oh shit, I made a grave mistake. How can I do that?
Yeah. Okay, so if you realize that you made a mistake, you can always come back and say sorry and self-attribute. You know, that's a standard thing we have done for a few thousand years. Well, self-attribution is something you can always build. So, for example, if you're doing contracts on the internet, you could always sign them with a key and just not connect the key with your person. And then if you discover, oh, I've been a really bad fraudster and I want to make amends, you go to confession and reveal that you own the public key and you prove it by doing a signature about the confession with it. So that is, we can do that. The question is if we want. That's a different question. Well, you want, I want, yeah. I don't know.
Okay, next one.
Thank you for a great talk, Smuggler, very thought-provoking. Am I too optimistic in thinking that, I mean, in the cyberspace that's about to take over the society in the coming years, these technologies are inevitable, right? They're formulas, they're math, and granted, there's some questions that are unresolved, but people will keep on researching and pushing that technology. Is it inevitable?
Okay, that's another thing where I changed my thought about. If you had asked me like 2 years ago, I would have said it will happen no matter what you do. I'm not so sure about that. There is the high risk of our communication networks being tightly controlled in the future. It's happening places. We don't feel it in the West, but if you're in China and Iran, whatever, hiding your communication, talking to whoever you want, is something that is becoming so hard that even specialists have issues with that, let alone the masses. And in a way, if we don't have communication, all our crypto is moot. So I don't know. Yes, if we have free communication, this is inevitable. Because people like you, him, her, him as well, her as well, and me are going to make it. But we don't own the networks. And the networks are physical. And there are people with guns and axes that can attack our networks. And there's no code that is going to stop them. Unless we outcompete them on building this, and before they notice, they have become the past. But I'm not so optimistic there, I'm sorry.
Next question.
Which doesn't, of course, mean that you shouldn't fight teeth and claws and everything, It should mean, that you fight more, not sit back and say, oh shit, it won't happen, No, now is the time, Bite back right now.
Okay, questions?
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Smuggler, for another inspiring talk.
You're so welcome.
Of which I must confess, I only understood about half of it. It's beyond my pay grade.
Same page here.
Right. But just on a small point, a piece of when you were talking about social media and banking loans, for example, I read something just recently that was quite spooky, actually, that where I think it was the New Zealand government, but correct me if I'm wrong, you probably know, have installed a new law where just passing through customs,
Yes.
if you refuse to unlock your telephone, they can fine you $5,000.
Yes.
Is that right? And is that really where we're headed?
That is not just where we're headed, it already exists. New Zealand is actually making, of those countries that have rules like that, they're actually the most friendly, because it's just a fucking fine. So you can have a calculation, how much is my data worth, and then, pay the fine or not. There are other countries where, if they have certain suspicion against you and you're refusing to open up your stuff, we're talking about things like contempt of court, which means that you can be locked up until you remedy the case. That is, for example, the US. It's the same in the UK. Let's not talk about the real evil states like China and Russia and whatever, However, if you're really interested in that topic, I'm giving a lightning talk about exactly that, and a tool to help there. Like tomorrow or when I'm going to give a lightning talk about that problem and how to get around it.
Okay.
So that was interesting. I sometimes wonder how useful it is to argue over the strict definition of words, but let's assume for the moment that you're entirely correct. So if we are going to say that strict definition of words are really, really important, so maybe Bitcoin isn't crypto-anarchist, but it certainly is really, really awesome.
Yes,
so,
no question, no question.
How would you what would you consider to be the proper definition of someone who believes in achieving greater freedom via Bitcoin?
There are two answers for that, and one answer will make me many enemies. The other one is a lie. Hold on, Frank. I have to think about how to do it and get out of here alive. Okay, number one, I totally agree. I have to look at you, I'm sorry. I totally agree that taking control over our monetary supply is an awesome idea. I also think that permissionless payments are an awesome idea. No question about that. I only think that it kind of works past the problem. Because I actually don't think that monetary control is our main problem. And I don't actually think that permissions are a main problem. My main problem is being woken up 6 o'clock in the morning by people with guns in their hands. That is my personal problem. And that is a problem that Bitcoin still hasn't solved. Instead, those people came, it's a fictional thing here, right? Okay. Those people came because of a Bitcoin transaction. What Bitcoin truly is doing right now, all the mixers, coin joiners, whatever, ignore them for a moment. What it truly does is provide all the evidence to fuck you. That is what it's doing right now. Now, I think that Bitcoin is a crypto-minarchist tool. So if you think smaller state is enough, it's one of the perfect tools to use. Totally, I agree. If you want to have a just state that is not wrong with attributing payments to you, doesn't control the monetary policy, and doesn't make any permissions if you can use money, then Bitcoin is a perfect tool for you. But I'm not a minarchist, because I think that the people with the guns are the real problem. I'm still alive. Shit.
I feel that we still have some time for questions. Okay.
No, I'm in trouble.
Hi there. Thanks for sharing your experience. What is your opinion on the NAP, the non-aggression principle?
I have two opinions on that. Opinion number one is I think it's awesome if everybody else sticks to it. So if you all follow the principle of not aggressing against me, I'm all for it. That's number one. Number two is I would love if I would stick to it as well. But in reality, humans break their own norms. So it's not enough to have the non-aggression principle. You have to have ways on how to regulate that. Those don't involve the government. They don't involve new aggression. I'm not saying that. But yes, NAP is cool, but it's not enough.
Okay. Next time, somebody from the front should ask.
Thank you for the great talk. Just a short question. I saw you
Can you
mentioned...
wave? Who are you?
What?
Can you wave? Who are you? Who's talking? Oh,
Yeah.
there. Okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
Yeah. So just a small question. You mentioned Zcash, but it has a trusted setup. So what exactly do you think is crypto-anarchic about trusting a couple of guys destroying a key?
I think that there's an enemy of the good, and it's called perfection. When you break that down, like how can we trust X, Y, Z? You break that down and apply it wildly, then you will wonder what where the mainboards come from that are controlling the mining pools. If they come from China and are from the same batch that had backdoors for Amazon Cloud. We have this issue that, and if you don't know the story, you find it on the internet. We have to trust some systems. We have to trust that not somebody comes to all our miners and changes the code there. So there's no perfect in all these things we do. It doesn't exist yet. We might be working on it, but right now we don't have perfect in all of these things. But we're making, we're trying to go up on the risk gradient, or going down on the risk gradient, so to speak. What I know about Bitcoin is this. On Bitcoin, statistical analysis against 99% of all users works perfectly. That is what I know about Bitcoin. What I don't know about Zcash is if these people that did the ceremony were honest or not. Or hacked, well, exactly. So, but it's an unknown. If they were hacked, whatever, then the main effect of that, as far as I understand it, is actually loss of monetary control, not de-anonymization. No? Well then, you're doomed if that is true.
Okay. So that's a question from the front.
And there's another guy there that is nodding. He wants to speak as well.
Okay. So you said that you have a problem with people with guns. So if so, I'm really curious to hear your definition of property and how would you have property without attribution?
Again, please.
You said that you have problems with people with guns?
Well, I only have a problem with those people if they come to my house, put their gun at my face.
Okay.
That is the problem I have.
Okay.
If you have a gun, you have it on your own property, you don't point it at me, hey, power to you.
Fine. So
I'll have ammunition for
regardless that introduction, how would you define property and how would you have property without attribution?
You don't actually need attribution of act to define property. So the only thing you need is a way to make a proof of property, and that can be a one-time proof.
So when somebody with a gun comes to you, they're gonna just look at the proof and not take it from you?
No, I'm not actually saying that. I'm not saying that crypto-anarchy on the totally cryptographic as in math and computers thing solves the world. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that if at all, then it might be the right side that helps us with that. So the problem of people with guns is first they have to find me. And that is where the digital side can help. However, if they have found me, then we need physical cryptoanarchy to help with the problem of guns. Like, not the problem of guns, the problem of people with guns wanting to harm me. Because, hey, people with guns are no problem.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I have a question regarding escrows. You mentioned when someone puts money to pay for future problems, maybe. So yeah, it's a way to ensure someone will be punished for doing something wrong. But why those escrows are all or nothing? Am I understand right? When someone doing something wrong, he will be punished for all the sum and will get nothing. But should not we evaluate the damage and get part of it?
Yeah, so all or nothing escrows work by putting up securities, not just the value of the good. So you have a buyer and you have a seller. Both put up a security about the completion of the protocol. So basically saying, even in when I say there's a conflict, it's actually a completion of the protocol. If I say nothing, then it's not a completion of the protocol. So in a way, the security is put in there so that both parties complete the protocol. Plus, there might be things like destruction of reputation, snitching on you or whatever. Those are additional securities that go beyond the price of the product. So when we're talking about all or nothing, we're not just talking about the product going from A to B. What we're talking about is that both sides are happy afterwards. And that also means that even the buyer puts up security. That's an all or nothing escrow.
Okay, I can see more questions in the back again.
Back here. Hi. It seems that you can be a crypto-anarchic consumer, but talking about cars, let's discuss about something that's complex and requires a complex logistics system. Can you be a crypto-anarchic car producer?
Yes.
Can you be a merchant on the street?
Yes.
And still be crypto-anarchic? And how can you imagine this happening? So many people come together and coordinating, trusting each other with capital-intensive investments, planning ahead for years before they produce the complex product, that's a car or an airplane.
So there are complex products humanity has built that didn't require any coordination, legal coordination at all. There are a host of open source softwares that basically just depend on people writing code and maybe somebody taking your pull request and merging it, you know? And they're quite complex. I'm pretty sure that the mechanical complexity of a recent Mercedes is lower than most of the software we're using, which is actually one of our problems. There are other things. For example, the most sold motorbike on the planet is not produced by a company. It is produced by a city of people that happen to build motorbikes together. There's no legal structure on top of it. There's actually no central plan. There are people that, okay, one person is very good at making chains, the other one is very good at making, what do you need for motorbike tires? I'm a IT guy, you know? So, and they trade it on the market like we are trading fruits. And then there are some people that buy all the parts together and stick them together, and it's actually the most sold motorbike on the planet. I forgot the name, so. So we don't really need huge legal enterprises for complex products. There's one thing we need huge legal enterprises for, and that is credit finance of complex products.
Reputation?
For what?
For being good at what you do.
Can you?
Yeah, I mean, don't just stick on the legal side, you know. I'm talking about being your reputation being attributed to you as being a person that's a craftsman on doing this, or that I can trust you that I will order something for you and you are going to give it to me in 2 years' time because that's how long it takes, and I will trust you with my capital.
Reputation is the historical recording of acts attributed to an identity. We had the question of attribution before. CryptoAnarchy doesn't prevent you from attribute if you want it. You can always sign your car with Mercedes-Benz, cryptographically if you want to. Because the only thing you really have to prevent is fraud. And fraud prevention through cryptography is something that might likely work.
Can you build anonymous DAOs, decentralized anonymous organizations, or can you build them anonymous as well?
I don't know, but I don't see a reason why that shouldn't work.
Regarding Bitcoin once again, what do you think
I'm
about...
so sorry. I'm really sorry. I didn't say anything about Bitcoin. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I am asking you to say something more. What do you think about recent developments, well, attempts to develop bulletproofs and other types of privacy? And with the Lightning networks, you get more privacy, onion layering of transaction and many other things. So maybe there is still some chance for Bitcoin?
Yes, there is. Well, it's true. No, I mean, yes. There are things to make the problem less worse. And there might actually be successful implementations that make it go away. But right now they haven't. We'll see. I'm hoping for Bitcoin, but we'll see. I don't know.
Okay. So are there more questions or?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. Okay. Because actually the next program will be the Laser King at 9, so we have quite a lot of time for questions.
No. 5 questions max, please. I really want to get out of here and drink something.
Okay.
I have a problem. We don't like our banks. We don't like our politicians. We don't like our tax collectors. If we fight against politicians, our banks, then we can weaken our structure as a republic. And there are forces like Russia, China, that would be very quick.
USA, European Union.
And they won't come here and to take over of us.
Yes.
So we fight against small enemy, but in this way we could install a much worse system. So what should we do?
Okay. I would agree with you when the talk would have been about classical anarchism. Because classical anarchism is revolutionary, which actually means take over and change the system and then maybe destroy it and whatever. Crypto-anarchism is a parallel structure that you build. And you kind of see if it works or not while you're still building it and the old system kind of still a little bit exists. That's number one. Number two is, if you're afraid of Russia, the best thing is to implement crypto-anarchy in Russia so they can't take you over anymore. Answer.
I've been wondering, it's another question about Bitcoin. What parts do you think are missing for Bitcoin in your eye to be great again? Meaning, I think you don't like the attribution part. And if we
it's the only thing I don't like.
Right. Would it be okay once we have confidential transactions and kind of the amounts would be masked, that it's then fine? Or is it not good enough and you need more like, let's say, proper shuffling and big joins of many people?
The latter comes closer to it. So the thing with attribution is that attribution is not digital, but it's a probability. So it's not 1 or 0, but it's anything between 0 and 1. And personally, I like to be that number to be 1 divided by the number of users. So that is what the ideal is. You know, the ideal might actually be more. It might be the number It might be 1 divided by the number of all people with a computer. You know, that would be even better, you know? But ideally, we have to have something that allows the user to make assumptions about the anonymity set he is in. That is something really hard when you look at CoinJoiner, etc., because sibling attacks, etc. So it's really, really hard to make assumptions about your anonymity set in all these systems. I don't know how